Alright, this is a different kind of video. In this video, I'm going to tell you about my experience in this Texas winter storm that we had, where we were without electricity and water for much of the week and nearly froze to death. Thank you, whoever's in charge of the Texas power grid. And I'm also going to throw in some luxury talk, so stay tuned. Hi YouTube, Autumn Beckman here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My channel is all about luxury living on a budget, from high-end luxury handbags and SLGs to the everyday luxuries of life. If that sounds interesting to you, please make sure you subscribe. Click the bell notification icon to be notified when I post new videos, and be sure to like the videos that you enjoy. And one of the big perks of subscribing to my channel is that on your YouTube homepage, you will see my community posts, and that's where I post information about discounts and sales and discount codes and cool luxury and other things that I find that I think you might be interested in, and I try to help you get good bargains on things you might be looking for. Let's get started here. I'm in Houston, for those of you who don't know, and last week we froze. The whole state of Texas froze. And I'm sure many of you, most of you, all of you heard about this on the news, and many of you watching also went through it with us because you were also in Texas or surrounding areas. Apparently we were not the only state affected. Difficult to get information on that since we didn't have electricity to watch the news. So my apologies if I'm too Texas-centric with this, but that's my experience. All right, so I have a little timeline written out here to help me remember what happened, but one of the things that I wanted to connect this to my channel with is luxury, of course. And I have, over the years that I've had this channel, I get comments, and I've had a couple comments recently. People who don't think that people who have luxury channels and talk about luxury handbags and such, they seem to think that we are materialistic, or that the luxury things are the only thing that matter to us, or that luxury is only a certain thing, it's only luxury brands of things, or like we think these material items are the only things that are really important in life. And of course, none of that is true. Those of you who watch my channel regularly, many of you have seen the videos from many years ago that I did where I talked about how I grew up and my father, and how he was a drug addict, and we were very poor and we lived without a lot of things, often including electricity or water, because we couldn't afford to pay the bills, and we didn't have a phone for many years, and we had a house that was literally falling apart around us and infested with bugs and rats, and lived that way for a long time. Coming from that and being where I am now, which is certainly not wealthy, I'm a teacher, but I'm in a position where I can afford the nice things that I purchase. I appreciate them, but I know that they are not the really important things. I just returned. I had to stop the video and go shut Vincent up because she was doing this loud dinging noise every 10 seconds or so, driving me crazy. So spoiler alert, Vincent did survive the freeze too. And thank goodness, because I was worried about her for a bit. I seriously was. So I'll tell you about that too. Anyway, tying this into luxury, people think all these stupid things, and why they think that, I don't know. There's so much judgment around luxury handbags, and we've talked about, oh my god. See, that was that noise I'm telling you about. I just went and gave her a bunch of grapes to keep her mouth busy, but she's still doing that. I don't know why there's so much judgment around luxury handbags, and this is a whole other video, so I don't want to get too deep into this, but there is. There's not judgment about all kinds of other luxury things, or all kinds of other things that aren't considered luxury that people spend tons of money on. I don't know, for some reason, people are super judgy about handbags. Anyway, in sharing this story, partly just because so many people have asked, and by the way, I should have said this right up front. Thank you so much to all the people who reached out during last week and asked about me and checked in and made sure we were okay. We were, although it was not fun, but we did make it through okay. We were a lot luckier than a lot of people in some ways, and not as lucky as other people. But overall, we were fine and did okay. Okay. So let me tell you the story. Last weekend, we knew the storm was coming. We couldn't really prep. It's Texas. We don't get weather like this. Our infrastructure and our buildings are not made for weather like that. And all we could do in our apartment is close the blinds to insulate the windows a little bit more, drip the faucets, and open the cabinets so the heat would get into the pipes. We knew it was going to be really cold, but we didn't expect the loss of power and water that we all ended up having, or most of us did. The storm was hitting us overnight Sunday into Monday. So that night, that Sunday night, we did lose power a few times. And then Monday morning, I woke up at about 5:30 and there was no power, and we didn't have power for a while. So I don't know what what time it went off overnight, but let me explain a little about our apartment complex. So, and some of the differences in our building and other people's housing situations. So in our apartment, our heat and AC is controlled by electricity. So when we lose electricity, we lose heat. Also controlled by our electricity is our water pump. So when we lose electricity, we also lose water. So anytime I tell you that we were without electricity, that means we also were without water. So woke up Monday morning, 5:30, no power, so not sure what time it cut off, but no power, no heat, no water. It got down to about 16 degrees. There was freezing rain, and then there was snow on top of that. Where we were, we only got about half an inch of snow, not really worth photographing. We had thought about going out to photograph, but it wasn't enough snow, plus the roads were icy and we didn't want to risk that because we're not used to driving in those conditions. So I don't have any pictures of that. I don't have any pictures to show you. Enough snow that it's like a big deal in Houston, but not enough that it was like real snow. You know what I mean? If you're up north, you know what I mean. So that whole day on Monday, no power, no heat, no water. So it was chilly. We were in layers. I had like 3 shirts on, 2 pairs of pants, and most of the week, we stayed in bed under blankets because that was the warmest place to be, under a bunch of blankets. I covered up Vincent in a bunch of blankets. I put sweaters on the dogs and they were under the blankets in the bed. So everybody was okay. I did notice that Vincent seemed chilly, and I'll tell you more about her in a minute, but that's how Monday went. Monday night at about 11:30 p.m. our power came back on. So that means our water also came back on, the heat came back on. So we got up, usually we go to bed, or I do, 9:30, 10ish, but it gets dark this time of year at 6 o'clock here. After 6 o'clock there's nothing to do. So we went to sleep pretty much after 6 o'clock, like not too far after that. During the day, the only thing to do with no power is read a book, so that's what we did during the days. We tried to keep the fridge closed as much as possible. I think we only opened the freezer once the whole week. Fortunately, we had plenty of food, and whether it was something in the fridge or something in the pantry, we had plenty of things that could be eaten without having to be cooked or warmed up. So we were okay on the food front. But the power came back on at 11:30, woke us up because the lights came on. So we got up and charged our devices, plugged everything in, and then went back to sleep. Tuesday morning we wake up. We do still have power, surprisingly. And since we still had water, and I hadn't been able to shower the day before, I took a shower real quick, hoping that the water wouldn't go out on me in the middle of it. Fortunately, it didn't. But it did go off again, the electricity, the heat, the water, at 10:30 that morning. We spent the rest of Tuesday with no power, no heat, no water. And at that point, Vincent was getting pretty cold. She was shivering, even with blankets on her cage, and I had moved her away from windows at that point. But I was worried about her. She's certainly the most fragile of all of us. And my sister said, she's an African bird, not an Alaskan bird, so she needs to be warm. My bathroom is the warmest room in the house because it doesn't have any exterior walls, it doesn't have any windows, and I had kept the doors closed as much as possible to keep whatever little bit of heat there was in that room. So I moved Vincent into the bathroom. She ended up staying in there with blankets on the cage too, in the dark because there was no power for lights, for 2.5 days. And I felt bad about that because I don't want her to be in the dark for 2.5 days, like pitch black dark for 2.5 days. That's not cool. But it was more important to keep her warm. If she had been shivering for 2.5 days, she may not have made it, because birds can be fragile. She's a pretty hardy bird as they go, and she's a very mellow bird. She's like the coolest bird I've ever known, and I've known a few. But the safest place for her to be was in the bathroom, even though it was dark. And of course I went in there and visited her several times a day, and she would talk to me. She always, when I walked in, she'd say hello. And when I'd leave, she would either say I love you, or she would burp, because that's Vincent. So no power after 10:30 on Tuesday. We go all night without power on Tuesday night. So Wednesday ends up being the coldest day because we haven't had any heat since the next morning. And of course it gets colder at night. So Wednesday, cold. It was cold before, but this was like a new level of cold. This was the day where we were still layered up, but we added hats and scarves and gloves because it was that cold. Indoors, even under blankets, and with all those layers. So I was very happy that I had put Vincent in the bathroom before that, because that was not weather for her to be in, or temperatures for her to be in. And it was still chilly in the bathroom, but it was still noticeably warmer there than anywhere else in the apartment. Later that night, so we didn't have power from 10:30 Tuesday until Wednesday night at 7:40. The power came back on. Again, we're sleeping, but it wakes us up because of the lights. So we jump up, we plug everything in, charge the phones and the computers and all that. I was still able to get internet on my phone so I could update you guys. I made a couple of posts on Instagram and stuff because I knew people would be thinking of us, because you guys are great. I appreciate that. So we jump up, we plug everything in, and also while we have electricity, I did a little bit of cooking because our stove is electric. That was another thing. There are a lot of people that have homes that have gas in their homes to heat them. We didn't have that. When our electricity was out, we had no heat source at all. Some people have gas heaters in their home, or I have a friend who turned on all 4 of his gas burners on his stove and slept that way. That was the way he heated his home. That's not okay. But he did that several nights in a row, and fortunately, he's okay, and his house didn't burn down. I looked for things in the fridge that needed to be cooked that would also be okay to eat cold. Same in the pantry, I popped some popcorn so we'd have snacks and stuff, because we still didn't know how long the power would be out. We expected that it coming on that Wednesday night, that it's not going to stay on at this point. We'd heard in the news about the rolling outages and all the issues with the Texas power grid. So just trying to make the most of that time, whatever time we did have. And we had about 2 hours and then it went out again. And during that time, no water. So sometime, Tuesday morning when we lost water, so Tuesday at 10:30, we didn't have water again for the rest of the week. So imagine, I'll get to Friday in a minute, but that wasn't pretty. So fortunately, Wednesday night, after we'd had that 2 hours of power, and it went off. It came back on again at 11, and we had power after that, except for a couple little outages here and there over the next few days. It was pretty much on the whole time. So we did have heat from that point on, but still no water. Turned out that, as with many homes and other buildings in Texas, we had pipes burst. Nothing burst in our apartment. We're very fortunate about that. So we didn't have any water damage, but some of the first floor apartments did. And right now there are construction crews all over the building working on pipes and fixing the plumbing. I'm still having issues with my toilet not filling back up, so I'm having to manually fill that anytime I need to flush the toilet. But it could be a lot worse. Thursday was when I brought Vincent back out to rejoin us in the lighted world, and she's been just fine since then. She's cool. So again, Thursday we had power, we had heat, still no water. Friday we had power, heat. Sometime in the afternoon the water finally came back on. However, it was like a trickle. We didn't have water pressure. Like the day before or so, there had been a boil notice for the city, so you couldn't drink the water. You shouldn't be using it to wash dishes. You're not supposed to be using dishwashers or doing laundry or anything like that. You're supposed to be conserving water and conserving electricity. I couldn't make a cup of tea. We couldn't boil pasta. I mean, you could, I guess, because you're boiling the water then, but the water did not smell right. And I didn't want to cook anything and eat anything that had been in that water. So we avoided doing that. And we basically just still used the water to flush the toilets. Now, I will say, Fridays when we got the water back on, it hadn't been on since Tuesday morning. And you know what that means, right? No bathing for 4 days. So despite the boil notice and not wanting to use that water, I took a shower that night because I needed it. Talk about luxury. This is one of the things I wanted to say is during that time, Wednesday when it was so cold in the apartment and our noses are cold, our fingertips are frozen. Luxury in a time like that is a cup of tea or a bowl of hot soup. Luxury that Friday was a shower. The first shower, a lukewarm shower even. First shower in 4 days. That was a luxury. I felt so good after that. One of the things I want to say about luxury too, one of my big points here related to that specifically, is a lot of us live in countries where we take luxuries for granted. A lot of people will define a luxury as something, I happen to have this on my desk because I was doing another video, like the luxury brands, right? It has to be Louis Vuitton or YSL or Chanel or Hermes or something to be luxury. So not true. We have so many luxuries in most of the places we live that we don't consider luxuries because everybody has them and we take them for granted. But running water is a luxury. Electricity is a luxury. Being able to shower anytime you want is a luxury. Being able to have a cup of tea is a luxury. And I just think it's insane that there are so many people who think that if you buy fancy, expensive handbags, that you can't possibly also appreciate those kinds of luxuries. So just wanted to say that. Boil notice was finally lifted, but until then we still couldn't do laundry or dishes or anything. We finally done a load of dishes. I was able to take a shower this morning for the first time with water that didn't have a smell. I think this was my third shower since Tuesday, and the two that I took like Friday and Saturday, yeah, the water did not smell good. I was very careful not to get it in my eyes or mouth because I don't know what was in it that was making it stinky. But yeah, I'm glad to have it back to normal. There were a couple other things I wanted to say. So one, we're used to this. Houston in particular deals with hurricanes often enough and flooding often enough that leads to power outages and water issues. We're used to living without electricity and power. We're not used to living in it in those temperatures though. And as you've probably heard from many different sources, our buildings are not built for that, and our infrastructure is not equipped for that. That's why we're in such dire straits there. Another thing, I scroll Facebook and I see all kinds of information about what was going on last week and what people are saying about it. I keep seeing these posts that really bother me. It says something about Texans, we weren't asking for handouts, and we were there for each other and we were helping our neighbor and stuff. Well, yeah, because that's what people do. It's not specific to Texas. I want to point that out because it happens in New Orleans too, and it happens in New York, and it happens in California, and it happens anywhere that there's a disaster or something bad that happens. People come together and help each other. That's human nature. So I don't know why anybody would be pointing it out like, yeah, Texas. Come on. Also, the thing that really bothers me when I've seen these posts is many of them will end with saying, and you know what you didn't see? Looting. Yeah, you don't see that in other places either. I mean, every once in a while you do, but it's really not that common. And by the way, there probably was looting. The news crews in these situations with the roads the way they are were not going to be able to get around and film everything that was happening. People with their cell phones even aren't able to get out and film things that are happening like normal. There probably was looting, but even if there wasn't, that's normal. I just don't understand. It's like these people are saying we're better somehow. That's the message I hear from it. And we're not. We're not at all. We're just like everybody else. People are sharing those as a positive thing, but to me, I see it as not positive. I see that as a negative message because it implies that other people don't do what we did, don't help each other. Other people do loot, and none of that is true. We're all the same. Oh, and also we're not asking for handouts and we're not weak. Was somebody calling us weak? I don't even know about that. I haven't heard that, but it makes me think maybe somebody was, and this is like they're countering that message. It's just like any other disaster. People come together when you need each other's help anywhere in the world. There's nothing special about Texas. So, and I was going to tell you this, forgot to say it earlier, and this is kind of gross, so if you don't want to hear something gross, like bathroom related, okay, then you can tune out now. But if you want to hear some dirty reality, during those days when we didn't have water, we had been able to fill one of the tubs, like halfway full I think is all we did, but the other tub we didn't have the plug for the drain, so we couldn't fill it. So we were using that water to fill the toilets to be able to flush them, and we didn't know how long the water would be out, and we were running out of water in the tub, so we were trying to be very conservative about how often we flushed, and I was trying to flush only once a day. I learned from camping and from the way I lived growing up that one of the things you can do if you're trying to not flush so often is you don't want to put a bunch of toilet paper in the bowl and then only flush it once a day because you can clog it. So the toilet paper was going in the trash instead. The people that pick up our trash were not coming, so I have a trash can full of dirty toilet paper. And that's just one of those things. So having a toilet that flushes and not having a trash can full of dirty toilet paper is another luxury. Yes, it is. So those of you who have flushing toilets, be grateful. I'm trying to think what other little tidbits I could tell you about the whole experience. Oh, you know what? Speaking of looting, I have an example that I witnessed personally. We live near a restaurant, and they have some wood outside for their wood oven. And I saw one day a lady come and take wood from the pile. As far as I know, she didn't work there because the restaurant was closed because they didn't have electricity. So I assume she lived in the neighborhood and had a fireplace and wasn't able to get wood from the grocery store, so she went and took wood there. Which, see, to me though, that's not looting. It's when you're taking something that you need to survive, then, I mean, I think the business would be okay with that. She was probably not the only one to take wood. Like, that's just humanity, right? That's not really theft, in my opinion. Oh, and also, one more little point to make is I have had several people, because I talked in some video, maybe the video about how I afford luxury. I'll link that below for you if you haven't seen it. I've talked in some video, maybe that one, about how I never want to own a home. And I have people every once in a while still watch that video and try to convince me that I really should own a home. And I know that they are coming from a good place because owning a home is a good thing for them, but it's not the right thing for everyone. This storm and all the busted pipes and all the other problems that homeowners have had, this is reason number like 3,200,026 for me not to own a home. I have no interest in fixing busted pipes and having, I keep seeing these pictures on the news and social media and stuff of pipes and ceilings that have burst and all the drywall has come down and the floors are flooded and everything in the room is wet and soggy. I've dealt with plenty of floods living in Houston. I don't want to flood. I don't want to deal with the house with the flood. I don't want to deal with pipes that have to be replaced. I mean, I could get deep into this and make a whole video on why I do not want to own a home, but this is another reason. All right, I'm going to end it there. So if you also went through this or you've been through something similar before and you want to share your experience, I'd love to hear it in the comment section below. Some of you have already told me, and I appreciate hearing about your stories and what happened. I know everyone's glad Vincent's okay. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope that you and your loved ones are doing well. Hope that I see you back here next time, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.